welcome Nick Moore, Ford Fiesta driver. Thank you very much for coming on the show and getting involved. But yeah, how are you?
Doing all right. It's good to be back in a race season, which is relatively normal compared to the last 2 years that we've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, really good. Can't complain at all. Just wish I was out on track more. I think is the only thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's good that you come on the show. First question, as it always is to a lot of my guests, is how did you first become interested in motorsports?
So from my point of view, I used to go to Snetterton all the time. So I'm relatively local to yourself. I live in Norwich, and my granddad was a massive motorsport fan and loved British GT. My old man is a massive racing fan as well. So from as early as I can remember, I was sitting on the outside of Coreham back when that was a proper viewing area at Snetterton, and sitting there watching these insane bits of machinery pound round that awesome corner before it was just all a bend, and it was a bend and a straight, and then onto the start finish straight. So a long time ago, and I caught the bug massively and started karting. And like a lot of drivers, I sort of couldn't really continue doing anything karting wise. So started playing rugby and stuff like this, and then started racing cars when I was 17, passed my driving test, and then did my arts, and yeah, it sort of snowballed from there really. And anything motorsport, absolutely love it. Doesn't have to be touring cars, doesn't have to be British GT, or doesn't have to be at the pinnacle of motorsport, which is Formula One. It's literally anything, and it's awesome. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you obviously mentioned going to Snetterton when you were younger, similar to sort of how I started. Was it something you thought you'd get into so much, like you have these days?
Probably not as much as what it's turned out to be. I think I've been very lucky with some things that have come my way. I've also worked very hard. It probably got to a point maybe about 4 years ago when I thought to myself, actually, I want to go and race properly and compete in championships, and I want to improve and invest in improving myself as a driver. So it's sort of, when I was 17 and I did my arts, I was sort of still just going and watching racing and stuff like this, and doing the odd bit of karting here and there, and doing track days when I could. But there's so much money involved with it, and I'm not from the wealthiest of backgrounds, so everything I do is, sponsorship basically. So it's sort of snowballed just with the effort that I was putting in. I was starting to see reward out of it, and I fell in love with the sport even more. Even though there's a lot of things I disagree with in the sport, and there's a lot of barriers, and everyone's got an opinion. But yeah, it's sort of not. If you ask me when I was 17 if I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, the answer would probably be no. But I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, and I feel very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's such a cool sport. I think once you get into it, you're gripped for life, and I've definitely found that. You said starting karting, like a lot of drivers do. I think everyone would agree it's the best way to start. How did you first get into that? Was that just for a bit of fun to start with? I know it's often sort of, a bit of a hobby on a Sunday afternoon or for someone's birthday in a lot of cases, but how did you start?
And it was literally that. The one good thing about karting is it's so accessible to turn up and drive a kart which belongs to the track, and they're not the quickest bits of machinery, but they're pretty safe given the fact that you're open to the elements and everything. And I think if you're watching a lot of motorsport, especially as a kid, and then you go and kart, whether it's at a birthday party, as you say, or like a random weekend, doing even just 30 minutes, if you do that, and to any parents watching as well, that's it. You're done. You'll be gripped, and you'll need to do it again and again and again. And then it'll get to a point where karting isn't enough, and it's like it's an addictive drug, in motorsport, and it sort of went from there really. But I did some competitive things and started to be really competitive, but it only went so far because again of the financials. As you know, I won't be the only person who sits here and says finances are the things that sort of stops you from progressing, especially at karting, which is astronomical nowadays. And So yeah, that's really how I started. And I think, if you're a fan of motorsport and you want to start to race a little bit and stuff like this, even karting and driving around in one of those karts owned by one of those kart tracks, that's a great way to start, and you'll learn a lot as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd recommend to anyone wanting to or thinking about it. Go and have a few days. That's the same for me. So yeah, that's really where I started, and there's no looking back, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's I think I think we'd all agree it's a brilliant way to start. How would you sum up your time, obviously, in karting? Because how long actually did you spend in karts before you obviously made the jump?
In terms of competitively, not long at all. We're talking 9 months to maybe just
Really?
over 12, and that was it.
Yeah.
I never owned a kart myself. It was always renting one,
Yeah.
and the rest of the time it was turning up at a kart track and driving one of their own karts, basically. And that was from an early age, all the way. I mean, when I sort of reached my teens, and schooling was very important, and that was drummed into me that was really important. And then rugby and football and cricket and all these other things, which are a lot more accessible, sort of took over my life. And it turns into one of those things where you're going to have to choose to do one thing or maybe two things if you're lucky. And usually there'll be things that are really easy to get to, and financially really easy to do, really easy to afford. And doing motorsport and karting, 2 or 3 times a week, that's not doable. So yeah, it was one of those where I had to be put on the back burner, but I was always gripped. Anytime I was back home, I'd be off up at Snetterton watching what was going on. Even the bike racing, I'd a massive amount of respect to the guys and girls that race bikes. Unbelievable. But then also the car racing as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's brilliant how much you can get involved in different ways, all sorts of different levels. But yeah, it is more difficult than other sports, like you say, to get stuck in with. But obviously, I think we're very lucky across the UK with the kart circuits. We've got where did you often race, and have you got any recommendations of some good kart circuits?
Elof Park in Beccles was my go-to. It was absolutely class, and it's changed a little bit since I was a lot younger, going there very regularly. So that was really cool. And then there's loads, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been down to Buckmore as well, and that's an awesome place to be. Clay Pigeon. There's loads, but even you get the little ones. Like we went to Le Mans on to go and watch the 24-hour, and we went 2 weeks before, and they've got a little go-kart track in the middle of the Le Mans circuit, and that is fantastic. And they try and model some of the corners and some of those that are on the actual circuit, and whilst speeds are nothing alike and the experience is nothing alike, it's an awesome place to go and do it, and it is just so accessible in terms of motorsport. So yeah, there's loads of locations. I mean, I think if anybody looked on Google Maps close to where they live, they'd find something, no more than half hour, 40 minutes maybe away from where they live, which they might not even have known before.
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend going down there and just giving it a go, even for 20 minutes, half an hour, and just seeing what you think of it. And I guarantee you'll love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. It's accessible. It's, I guess, the most accessible form of motorsport out there. Obviously, I think we all know the jump from karts to cars is a big one, and obviously a lot of work goes into that. You mentioned obviously getting your license, your R's license. Talk us through a bit of that process. What goes on in securing that? Because I'm hoping one day, while I don't want to be a driver, as that's going to be the main part of my career, I'd like to have a go at some point. So yeah, talk us through sort of the process of getting your race license and what goes into that.
Sure. It's probably changed a little bit since I last did it. So I was 17 when I went and secured mine, or almost 18. So, I mean, visiting the Motorsport UK website would be the number one. And I think that's one thing in terms of British motorsport that we are very good at. It is giving really good information in regards to how to be able to get into it and how to go about securing your race license, and stuff like this. So, you get sent a pack out, which will show you absolutely everything that you need to do in order to follow up. It will show you all details about local race circuits, people to contact. You used to, I don't know if it's still the case, how you go about it, but they used to send you out a DVD, which would show you everything in terms of, flags, different ways of braking, so you look at things like trail braking, for example, different ways of driving a car safely and stuff like this. They used to have Steve Deeks, who's an absolute legend. He used to do this for, the old process of securing your ARDS or your race license. So that's what I went through. I already knew my local circuit was Snetterton, where they do ARDS tests and stuff like this. So turned up there literally one day after I was in year 12 at the time, I think it would have been. 17, and I went after school one day and did an evening track day, and did my ARDS there and then. Basically, it took hour and a half total. So you do like a written test, which is all about the flags, all the different things to look out for in terms of racing and to make sure you're safe on paper. And then you go out on track with an instructor, and they'll, do one flying lap and show you where to go. And then it's down to you to go out and do 2 or 3 laps and just show that you're competent and safe on track, not necessarily quick. So I think that's one thing a lot of people get worried about, is they don't want to do their ARDS because they're worried they won't be fast enough. Mm-hmm. It's not about that. You have to be at a reasonable pace, because if you're too slow, then it does become dangerous when you've got very fast cars on track with you. But it's more about, being able to drive to a racing line, being able to brake safely, turn in safely, all of these little things which are massively important. And you realize that as you grow as a driver later on into your career, that's what it's all about. So it's not about being quick at all, it's about being safe. And that's the number one priority when we go and do the thing that we love on the weekends. But yeah, the Motorsport UK has a load of information on it, which is massively relevant, really, really helpful. And the other thing I found as well is everybody's extremely accommodating, even at the circuits. People want to support you to get your license. It's a real family sort of thing, and motorsport's quite incestuous, which is actually a really good thing. Because you'll always know someone that knows somebody else, and that's how you build up a network, and that will help you with things like securing a license and being able to be linked up with a team who can help you get on track for the first time, and all of these different things. So yeah, that's what I would go and look at. And then you have the individual schools like the Motorsport School as well, who I did my ARDS license with to become an ARDS instructor, where I'm on a probation license now for that. So yeah, they're based at Mallory Park, and would highly recommend the guys there as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, all that goes into it. I remember I've spoken to a few people about this, and I think a lot of people think once you've got your ARDS test, you go from that and jump straight into racing. But I guess there's a lot of work in between those stages before, first finding a championship that is going to suit you commercially. And there's a lot that goes into that when you're picking a championship to finally get started in racing.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount, and I've lost count of how many times I've mentioned it in this chat right now. But the finances is one of the key things, really, that people need to think about when they're going to make a move into racing, because obviously there's a cost that comes with doing your ARDS test, and it's not astronomical by any means. But you need to think about, do you have the capability to run a car yourself? And it's not just the capability, it's also the time, because before you even turn up to a race weekend, there's a lot of prep that goes into running a car to make sure it's safe, to make sure it's set up properly, all of these different things. Because if it's not safe, if it's not maintained properly, it's going to get even more expensive for you. So there's all those things to consider. I myself and the team I race with, Missy Racing, and I've raced with now for about 4.5 years, we all laugh because I have absolutely no idea how to spanner on a car. I can change wheels on my road car and stuff like this. I can change it on a race car. That's it. So that was a big consideration for me. But, you know, having a team run a car for you and worry about all of the mechanical stuff, that's a cost in itself. And a lot of people, especially at club level, and I have friends that still don't understand it. You know, when it comes to running a car, it's not like a hobby, as it very much is for us. Whilst, you know, we do it competitively, and I have sponsors that pay me to do this and pay me really good money in order to go and physically race. It's not a hobby for the team, or any of the engineers or mechanics. That's literally their livelihood. That's their job. So, you know, there's a cost that comes with that. They need to be paid for the work that they do, especially when most of the time they're working, it's on a weekend. And then they work all week preparing cars and stuff like this. So it's non-stop, and fair play to them for doing it, because it's, you know, whilst it's not loads and loads of money, you know, especially in club racing, that is literally their livelihood. And then you have your entry fees and fuel fees and your consumables. You've got lots of different things to think about. And I sat down with my dad at first, and this was and I said to him, I want to go racing. You know, you look at things like Ginetta Juniors at the time, and I think about all these different things that I need to do in order to go racing. And that's things like, you know, get your race license. You need to have the next step ready. You need to be able to speak with teams. And I think if you turn up to any race weekend and walk over to any team, they'll happily have a chat with you and tell you what's involved and what's needed and stuff like this. The same with different championships. They'll tell you all about what's needed on that side. So yeah, getting your race license, one thing. It's all the little steps that come in. For me, I wasn't racing properly until maybe a year and a half after I even completed my arts.
Yeah.
That's when I did my first race, I think, if I remember rightly. I was wrong, but yeah, it was a long time after.
Yeah. It's you know, there's a lot of work, as I say, for that goes into racing as a whole. It's very consuming. So once you'd got your odds and everything, where did you get started in terms of proper car racing? What championships did you start in?
Yeah, so I mentioned Misty Racing, and I think that's, whilst my racing career started before Misty, it only really got going when I joined the team. So I raced in VW Cup briefly with Team Hard, and that was an experience. And then, you know, I did a few little bits in terms of test driving a Ginetta GT5 car back when I was at university, with the dream of racing a Ginetta, as was the want for a lot of people at the time. But money was too much. And did a few little things in between, like the 2CV 24-hour at Snetterton, which was a hell of an experience and one of the best bits of fun I've ever had on a racetrack. And I've done it 5 times now, with a couple of teams. So that's awesome. But yeah, it only really got going when I joined Misty. So I did a one-off, or it was meant to be a one-off race weekend with him in the Hyundai Coupe Cup, run by a guy called John Winter. And I found Misty Racing on Race Cars Direct, which is a great website. Again, I'd recommend to anybody having a look on there to find arrive and drive packages. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just, you know, I like helping people out. But I found Misty on there, and spoke to Steve Kite, who runs the team, and it was quite apparent that he and his old man Jeff have quite a bit of racing pedigree behind them, and they know what they're doing. And went and joined the team for that one weekend. We did a test on the Friday, in the car, when I'd never sat in it before, but I'd been around Snetterton, of course, quite a lot. And it went really well, but it was difficult to gauge how well it. And then on the day after, it was qualifying in 2 races, and it went awesome. I think I qualified 5th and finished 5th in the first race and 4th in the second race, behind Steve, who runs the team and won the championship that year, or won the series that year, behind Alex Kersley, who won the series last year and had won it the year before that race I did, and Wayne Rocket, who won it in 2019 when I did a full season with Misty in the Hyundai Coupe Cup, and I got my first ever outright car win at Thruxton, my first outright pole at Thruxton, podiums at every weekend apart from one. The coaching that Steve gave me, and the guidance, and also, you know, I had a hell of a car underneath, thanks to those guys. that really helped me progress. And I went from being to being pretty quick in a coupe cup car. Maybe not the quickest, but I could, stick with the fast boys at the front. I could fight. My racecraft came on so much. And that's by looking at video and looking at data as well, and speaking with Steve and getting a lot of a lot of benefit from his experience. His many years. And we bought a Ginetta the year after, in 2020, to be able to go and race in the GT5 Challenge. And we tested it, shook it down at Snetterton. It went well. The car was, in good nick and everything. There's a few things we needed to change. Had sponsors on board to sort of back this stuff. And it was looking amazing, like all the hard work. And I'm talking hours and hours, of hard work going into sort of, and then COVID hits. So it's a bit of a nightmare, and it stopped everything. We were sort of analysing, excuse me, what we should do, and came to the decision that we should maybe sell the Ginetta because it's a pricey bit of machinery to have just
absolutely.
And decided to look at another route. So that's how we ended up in the Fiestas, basically. We were meant to do it for a full year last year, couldn't get the money together, did Snetterton just as a one-off. In the ST150 class, because they've got the turbo cars in, and had a really good weekend, 3 podiums, a third, second, and a win. And the win came from a very long night eating Chinese with Steve, again, looking at video and data. And being able to get a win in that race against, Ethan Rogers and Will Keller. They were 2 very quick boys who were awesome guys as well, and really fair racers. And that was great. So we started this year with a good double win at Brands. Missed out on pole by a 10th to Joe Knight, who is one of the ex-Fiesta juniors, and again very quick. So it was almost a perfect weekend, but not quite there. But hopefully we can win the ST150 Championship this year, and look at what options there are for next year, whatever that might be.
I think it's a great championship, Fiestas. It's helped lots of drivers progress along. Racing's always close. After a strong first round, you obviously mentioned looking to the future. This must be, good going into the rest of the season. And it must be nice after, a couple of years that have been sort of affected by COVID to have a nice long season ahead.
It's nice to have a massive chunk of the finances sorted. It's the biggest thing for me, and it is for many others. It's we've had 2 awful years of COVID. Motorsport as a whole, there's a lot of teams that have fallen by the wayside. Misty Racing had a tough couple of years. They also had a fire at their unit at the start of that, just before COVID as well. So I was almost looking for another team at one point, but they've managed to come through it and are stronger than ever. It's just good to have fans back at the trackside, for pit lanes or paddocks to be fully open to the public. Because I was a kid going and grabbing autographs of anybody wearing a race suit when I was a lot younger, and sitting in loads of random cars and stuff. My granddad speaking with people and making friends with everyone, and that to me is motorsport. And we're maybe things aren't quite the same as that now, but now that the COVID restrictions are starting to go, we're getting back to the sport that we all loved. And for me personally, being able to get out on track and to represent my sponsors, I think that's awesome. And we've got a mega sort of final 6 months for the championship this year, and I'll be living it every single day. I think talk about it every all the time with the team. And I have aspirations to go and race in British Tourist Motorsport. Formula One has never been a goal of mine, although I'm way too, and certainly don't have the money to go. Things like TCR UK are very prominent now in the UK, and I think back then, because he was involved with Maximum, of course, or owns Maximum, and I owned the championship at the time as well. And he's a great guy, NFL. So that's certainly on the radar, as well as things like the JCW Minis, even the Cooper class, potentially. And then again, you look at things like Civics, and we're already talking about it, but I guess the main focus is to put all of my effort into winning this championship this year, and hopefully, things then start to come your way. But we'll see. We'll hopefully have something sorted way before next year, so we don't have to have the mad rush over Christmas. But whatever it will be, I hope it will be a step in the right direction for everything. And that's all we're looking at. So, yeah, I need to win this first and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish you the best of luck in doing so. Thank you so very much for coming on the show for this interview. And yeah, hopefully see you at a racetrack in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, Snetterton's a couple of months away, so we'll get you there.
Definitely. Yeah, that'd be good. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you, man. Speak soon.